As we watch new protests unfold in the death of Freddie Gray, it's worth knowing that some of the anger and mistrust you're seeing have as much to do with a perceived pattern of police abuse as this one single incident. The mayor acknowledges that. People who live in some of Baltimore's toughest neighborhoods say it's a given. Large payouts to victims of alleged police brutality, including a pregnant woman and a church deacon, also speak loudly to what protesters say is their larger problem with the Baltimore police. More on that tonight from Jake Tapper.
Black men, tell the truth and stop the lies. All black men don't have to die.
It has been dubbed, originally without irony, Charm City. Baltimore, Maryland has long held a reputation for being one of the most dangerous cities to police in the nation, with a history of brutality on both sides of the badge.
No protect and serve no more.
It's a reputation that Freddie Gray's death has brought to light once again.
You know your team was wrong.
Gray was young, African-American, had a slew of previous drug-related arrests, and he spent time in the housing projects here. In short, Gray represented one of Baltimore's most watched populations, watched by police on foot patrol and watched by an audience of millions in television depictions. Baltimore has served as the go-to example of urban tension in shows like The Wire or Homicide: Life on the Streets, shows based on neighborhoods dotted with death. This map, compiled by the Baltimore Sun, shows 211 homicides in the city last year. So far, 2015 has seen 63. These numbers are vastly better than in previous decades when crime was notoriously high, more than 350 homicides in 1993 alone.
That's right.
At the time, police recruitment videos used the slogan, "And you thought your job was tough."
How'd you like it if we quit?
It is a dangerous job that's difficult to do without criticism. Today, the Baltimore Police Department is working hard to improve its relations with those whom it serves, posting photos of outreach efforts and successful busts on Twitter. It's an effort of which the mayor is proud.
I think Baltimore has had a very challenging history when it comes to the black community and the police department. We've done a lot of work and made a lot of progress.
It's time that we get justice.
But for many in this city, these efforts do little in the wake of videos such as these, showing officer brutality, punching, hitting. Residents say it's all too common.
Freddie Gray is not the only one they beat up in this past 2 weeks.
In 2014, the Baltimore Sun reported that the city had paid more than $5.7 million in judgments and settlements for alleged police misconduct since 2011. This includes six-figure settlements for allegedly slamming a pregnant woman to the ground, for killing an unarmed Marine veteran, and for beating a church deacon with no previous record.
I've heard the complaints. I've heard the distrust, and it is clear there's still work to be done.
Baltimore police called for a government investigation. Now, less than a year later, the Department of Justice will investigate the force once again.
We need stronger enforcement and more tools to hold officers accused of wrongdoing accountable.
In a city as hard to police as this one, the biggest challenge may be a department trying to police itself.
That was Jake Tapper reporting. I want to dig deeper on this subject, and I want to bring in Mark Puente. He's the Baltimore Sun reporter who investigated those settlements for alleged police misconduct that Jake just told us about. Also joining us again is CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Sonny Hostin. Mark, your investigation, more than 100 cases, formal lawsuits against the city of Baltimore alleging police brutality or excessive force, millions of dollars in settlements. In the context of all that, how do you view what happened to Freddie Gray?
Well, a lot of those cases, or nearly all those cases, showed that they were questionable arrests. The mayor of this town has called into question the probable cause. So I think we could put it into a similar context and what led to the arrest in our investigation, where most charges were dropped in nearly all the cases. The folks were charged with obstruction, disorderly conduct, resisting, and assault on a law enforcement officer. Prosecutors and judges dropped or dismissed the cases. The suspects received severe injuries, broken bones, battered faces. Some had needed surgery to repair these injuries. They later sued, and the city either settled the cases or juries award damages.
So you're saying in nearly all of the cases you investigated, the suspects actually ended up, the charges against the suspect actually ended up being dropped?
That's correct. Some of the patterns that emerged pretty quickly in our investigation was they were all common charges, those 4 charges, or you found language in the charging documents that said the suspect became defensive, the officers feared for their safety, they had to take defensive action. Nobody was prosecuted on those charges in any of those cases. They were all dismissed once it got to court or to a prosecutor's hands.
How common was it for police to actually face charges?
In our investigation, we didn't find any examples where officers were prosecuted. There was complaints that were made to Internal Affairs. The department couldn't find records in many of those cases. And the department did admit they didn't have a very good tracking system. We also reported that the city did not track lawsuits against officers. We found multiple officers who were sued multiple times, and the city didn't realize it until we pointed it out to them.
Wow.
They've since vowed to change that.
Sonny, I mean, you were a federal prosecutor in the Baltimore area. What do you make of all that?
Well, and I'm glad we're talking about this because that really puts this case, the Gray case, I think, in perspective, because Baltimore has had a history of having police brutality, and the fact that now we have the police investigating the police doesn't give me much confidence in this particular investigation. We know that the Baltimore City Police Department has now interviewed 5 out of the 6 officers. They plan to wrap up their investigation May 1st and then give it over to the state's attorney's office, the local prosecutor. Well, what does that do for someone that's a prosecutor? You have the police investigating themselves.
Mark, you know, I think for a lot of people, they're surprised that, I mean, the idea that Freddie Gray just made eye contact with an officer and apparently turned around and ran away, and that set all this in motion. Does that surprise you? Should it surprise people? Because the representatives of the police, they say the stop was justified because the neighborhood had been designated a high crime area.
Sure, but many of the lawsuits that we looked at, there was references in the papers, and some of the people we talked to said, you know, the police pulled up, and these officers in a Gray case were identified with uniforms. A lot of the ones we looked at were called knockers. They were in plain clothes. And one had even said in a publication that, you know, he gets in his car, wears jeans and a T-shirt, he pulls up and looks at somebody, they look at each other, and it chases on. So that's not uncommon in this city.
How fast do you think this investigation, I mean, it's been 10 days. Does this seem slow to you? Because I talked to the representative for the Fraternal Order of Police. He says, oh yeah, this seems normal to me.
It doesn't seem normal to me, quite frankly, especially given the heightened scrutiny on this case and given the fact that the family hasn't received the body in order to conduct an independent autopsy. No autopsy report has been released. A lot of these cases, Anderson, quite frankly, that we have covered, we've had more information given to us as the media by the police. You think about the case in Ferguson. We had every single bit of information from about Michael Brown. We had very little information about the police officers.
Mark, does this seem like a long investigation to you so far?
It seems pretty quick. In one quick example, an officer, Michael McSpadden, he was sued 5 times. The city had paid out multiple times in payouts. We uncovered a video that contradicted everything he said in an alleged beating. He said the individual was handcuffed and he took a defensive position and he had to defend his safety. We uncovered a video in the 11th hour that showed he'd already handcuffed the guy. The guy gets knocked out and falls on the floor. He gets picked up and he's already cuffed. That's been going on for 6 months.
Wow.
And nobody can say what's taking so long. And he's been collecting a paycheck on suspension with pay.
Mark Puente, it's fascinating reporting for the Baltimore Sun. Mark, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sonny Hassan as well.